Oh, Tucker. Well, he was at Megyn Kelly's live show in front of an audience where she asked him about the whole Nick Fuentes controversy. And I want to show you some clips and just tell you a few of the things that Tucker said. But this was his response when asked about that whole interview with a modern-day neo-Nazi who's called for the death penalty for Jews, who says he loves Hitler, who's a great guy, all that kind of stuff. Have a watch of Megyn Kelly's question and then Tucker's answer, because I think it is rather telling.
I mean, I personally have watched videos of him questioning the Holocaust, liking
him being Fuentes.
It to baking cookies in the oven, and there's no way you could have gotten to 6 million, seems to be his theory. He seems to think that we've way overstated the number of Jews killed in the Holocaust. He's ripped on poor Usha Vance in the most offensive terms, which I mean, so what do you say to those people who say, why didn't you raise any of that?
You know, do your own interview the way that you want to do it. You're not my editor. Buzz off. I mean, I don't know. You want to go yell at Nick Fuentes? I'll give you his cell. Call him. And go sit and yell at him and feel virtuous or whatever. That's up to you. I got the same thing with...
I mean, I personally have watched...
So there's just one little problem with this, Tucker and Megyn, who seems to be chuckling along, which is that, let's just say you wanted to say that that's the case. That all he does with his guests is he just lets them speak and listens to them. But he didn't do that with Senator Ted Cruz just a couple months earlier. He was arms crossed, challenging everything he said. He was difficult. He was rude to him. He got angry and upset with things Ted Cruz said. And it was an exceptionally hostile interview. You can watch it yourself. But there was none of that with Nick Fuentes. That's where the flaw lies in what he says. That's where it exposes Tucker. The irony is he posted a clip of his interview with Nick Fuentes, one of the clips on his channel. One of the clips says, Tucker debates Nick Fuentes on his most controversial views. You can watch that yourself on YouTube, that clip. The problem is he doesn't, debate Nick Fuentes at all. There is no debate taking place in that clip. He is just listening to him and laundering probably Tucker's own views, I would say, to some extent, through the mouthpiece of him and other crazies that he's had on his show. So I also invite you to watch and compare and contrast his interview with Ted Cruz versus Nick Fuentes. And he says, if you want to appear virtuous and challenge people, fine. Well, you seem to want to appear virtuous, quote unquote, and challenge Ted Cruz, but not Nick Fuentes. So I think you can make a very reasonable case and say that, you know what, I want to hear from everyone, especially people who have big influence over people like Fuentes. I think you can make that case a free speech argument, but then I think at the very least, especially if you're going to be challenging other people, you have a moral duty, I believe, if you've got a massive platform, you can influence a lot of people in your audience, to challenge people, to at least make people aware of some of their extreme and wrong and evil views. Tucker doesn't seem so interested. Whatever. This is the problem with the woke right, as they're termed. They believe in no critique of one side. And if you do that, it's cancel culture. But they go after the other side. The Christian Zionists, the Jews. And if you challenge them, you are engaged in cancel culture. I can't make sense of it. It's just stupid. It's stupid. Then Tucker states, he says that Western civilization is derived from the New Testament and we must reject collective punishment, as if that's what Israel's doing. The problem with if that's what Israel's doing is that this is the most surgically precise war, Gaza, in the history of modern urban warfare. Much more precise than when we dealt with ISIS in Iraq. So the whole collective punishment thing is nonsense. He's perverting what the Torah says, the Old Testament, and frankly, it is ridiculous to say that the Western civilization is not also rooted, and in fact, I would say much more rooted, fundamentally rooted in what's called the Old Testament, in the Torah. You know who said that to me himself? Charlie Kirk. He said to me He said, without the Torah, you do not have America. Josh Hammer said as follows. Tucker Carlson is a world-class gaslighter. He's also a Marcionite, a heretic on Christianity's own terms. The entire foundation of Western law and morality, very much including the United States, is Genesis 1:27. God created man in his image, and the image of God he created him. Where do you think the Declaration of Independence gets its inspiration from? Tucker would also do well to pay a visit to Philadelphia, where he could visit the Liberty Bell and its inscription of Leviticus 25:10, proclaim liberty throughout the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. Benjamin Franklin famously proposed the national seal of the US should be Moses leading the Israelites across the Red Sea. John Adams wrote, I will insist that the Hebrews have done more to civilize men than any other nation. And on it goes. The argument that the Hebrew Bible, Old Testament, has no role to play in the origins of Western civilization is an absurd, insane lie. It isn't just a disingenuous attempt to further alienate Christians and Jews. It's positively un-American. But what else would we expect from the same guy who fawned over the leaders of Russia, Iran, and Qatar while grilling Ted Cruz? And, the constant talking about Gaza and collective punishment and all of that, and Israel. AP wrote, I try to avoid using the why aren't you talking about Christians in Nigeria and Sudan getting killed by the thousands, but you talk all day about Gaza argument, because the obvious answer we get is, well, we're allies with Israel, so our support affects what's happened in Gaza, etc. But it's a wrong answer on many levels, but it's still an answer. But when Tucker lists genocides like Nazi Germany, Rwanda, and only adds Gaza to the list, now I feel like I can ask that question. Where are you when it comes to what's happening in Sudan and Nigeria, especially when you are talking from a so-called Christian angle and your self-righteous mountain? By the way, I would also add that the whole, Israel's a Western ally thing also doesn't work, precisely because Israel is held to a double standard when it comes to other Western allies. When 10% of Mosul was killed when we tried to destroy ISIS there, only 2% of Gaza's population have died in this war. And yet wasn't upset with the former, only the latter. When the civilian to combatant ratio in Mosul when fighting ISIS was 9-1, whereas in Gaza it's about 1.5-1. He wasn't bothered with the former, he is by the latter. That's where the inconsistency lies. This is just about Jew hatred. Just say it plainly as it is. He has a problem with the Jews and it's rooted in his particular interpretation of Christianity. And this is nothing new for the Jews. By the way, there's a huge amount of Christians that watch this show that are deeply supportive of Israel, that understand that God himself is a Zionist, that he gave the land of Israel and the land of Israel to the Jews, and he is keeps his eternal covenant with them. But for those who try to say replacement theology, all of that, and the Jews are obviously a massive threat psychologically and theologically to Christians, because if they are right, then they think that ruins their whole narrative, that they are the new chosen people somehow. That's what's going on here with Tucker, and therefore he doesn't need to make sense. He just has to deal with this theologically. It's the same reason you have the Islamists, by the way, hating Israel, because for them Islam has to take over the world. They are the new vessels of God's light or darkness, to be honest, in the case of Islamism. And Israel, the re-establishment of the Jewish people's sovereignty in the land of Israel, is deeply threatening to their whole narrative about Islam conquering the region and the world. He then also says, he complains about a member of Congress, Jewish pro-Israel member of Congress, saying, bomb all of them. Now, obviously, the congressman, he wrote this just after October 7th and is, I would assume, talking about Hamas. Then, Tucker Carlson said, that's just unacceptable. That's collective punishment. Dave Rubin pointed out a few months ago, Tucker told Ted Cruz that if they were trying to assassinate Trump, Tehran should be nuked. Isn't that collective punishment? So it's just all completely, utterly inconsistent nonsense. And that really is the point, that it's not about being rational. It's about deeper prejudice against the Jews. A quick update before we continue. I've got some big news for you. We've finally decided to bring JTV in person. I'm planning a speaking tour across America where I'll be talking about everything from the big issues the Jewish people and Israel face today to Judaism's deepest ideas, and of course I'll be taking your questions. If you want me to come to your location, just click the Google form link below in the video description and I'll be in touch. Let's have a conversation. So we need to start seeing moral clarity, I think, from people in the conservative camp in America. And, I did not like seeing Megyn Kelly just kind of, she seemed to brush off what he said or maybe laugh at it or agree with it. I think this is cowardice. This is, maybe she hasn't seen his interview with Ted Cruz, but it just, the hypocrisy is really dangerous if you don't call it out. Really dangerous. This could poison the whole American conservative movement, and now is the time for people to have courage and speak up. What will happen, I can't predict. We certainly will continue to do all we can to share the truth. A quick message. We all hear about the Palestinian displacement, or Nakba, of 1948. But there was another, even greater displacement that we haven't been told about. Nearly 1 million Jews were expelled from Arab lands at the exact same time. Watch the trailer for our new and absolutely essential documentary called The Real Nakba. And if you want to watch the full film, just click the link below in the video description. We've all been told about the Nakba, the Palestinian catastrophe of 1948. Around 700,000 Arabs were displaced. But here's what you're rarely told. That displacement didn't come from some Jewish plan for genocide. It wasn't Israel's goal. It wasn't Israel's desire. It happened because Arab leaders launched a war of annihilation. They tried to wipe out the newborn Jewish state, vowing to drive the Jews into the sea. And in the chaos of that war, people fled. Many because their leaders told them to, promising they'd return after victory. But the term Nakba was originally used to describe the fact that the Arabs lost the war, not the displacement. Now the term describes the displacement of war used as a political weapon against Israel. But there was another Nakba you haven't been told about. A catastrophe rooted not in the fog of war, but in the clear, deliberate desire for persecution and genocide. It happened at the very same time, and it led to even more displacement. Yet most of the world has never heard of it. Over 850,000 Jews, more than the number of displaced Arabs, were driven from their homes across the Arab world. Communities that had thrived for millennia were uprooted overnight. Families stripped of citizenship, of property, of dignity, assaulted, expelled, forced to flee with nothing but their faith. Why? Because they were Jews. Because Israel dared to exist. Because the Arab League openly orchestrated it, drafting plans in 1947 to freeze Jewish bank accounts, seize property, and intern Jews as enemy nationals. This is the real Nakba, a catastrophe born of pure anti-Semitism. In this JTV documentary, we'll journey country by country, from Baghdad to Cairo, from Sana'a to Tripoli, uncovering buried truths and survivor voices. And no, this isn't a tale of victimhood, it's a saga of endurance, courage, and triumph. Because the Jewish people didn't just survive this Nakba, we rebuilt, we came home. In Israel, our phoenix soared from the ashes. So buckle up and let's dive in. To watch this JTV Plus documentary and access much more premium content, click on the link in the video description.